Hi everybody. So close. Alright. It's the abstractionist. There we go. There we go. Okay, so in my previous video, which is up, it's basically wrapping up May. I mentioned that I was getting ready to go to a market. So my first market, I think I did 2 markets last year, carry over into this year. Yeah, so this will be my, third market? No, it'll be my second market, my third tarot event in public. Because I remember, because I got drunk. Well, not drunk, but I had alcohol in the seltzer. Which wasn't, it was like a hard seltzer, which was pretty cool. So it wasn't that bad. So I am going to start picking the decks that I need for this event. And I'm just gonna go through kind of what my game plan is now, having done like 2 events in public. So first thing is I do a pretty standard like pricing. I do 1 card and I do 3 card and I do 10, 20. That's it. Because it's a market, people are trying to look at other stuff. They're not trying to like be at your table, like chopping it up. Like the way that people are on Instagram, but particularly YouTube when it comes to this, and I see this on YouTube a lot. I don't follow a whole bunch of people on Instagram when it comes to tarot. Not that people on here become excessively like needy, but they are really wrapped up in like the reading, and they, particularly if you don't pick a cards, they tend to be longer, right? They're 15, 30, 45, 60, 90 minute long readings. You don't have that time at a market, and people don't have the expectation that you're going to do all of this stuff at a market. Some people, if it's their first time, they may try to act like they want you to be like a psychic. That's not necessarily overlapping. Like some people read tarot and are psychic, and some people just use the cards because people are like maybe perhaps more accepting of that than them just sitting there and reading their life being a psychic or medium. So there's that. People at markets, you know, if they're buying other things, your readings cannot be like $80 at the market. So you need to make sure you're setting some sort of reading. You can do 1 or 2 kinds of readings, maybe 3 at the most, because you don't want to get bogged down with they have all these choices and that they kind of get paralyzed. So I would make it really simple for them to pick, generally just 1 or 2, and usually price them some at a place where they feel more comfortable and that the barrier to entry is like pretty low. Only because, and I'm not saying to get more people in the door, you like make all this, you try to make more money or you have to work harder. But what I'm saying is it's a market. It's a holiday market, it's a summer market, it's a whatever market. People are not obligated to come to your table. They're not obligated to go to tarot. It's not something that is necessarily going to pay bills. It's not something that they're necessarily looking for. It's something that is entertainment. It can be very helpful for people, and it is very helpful for a lot of people. People have been going to tarot readers for years. I'm talking about in their personal life. We've had tarot readers for hundreds of years, and people have found great value in them. That being said, it's a market. You're there for a few hours. You need to read for people, give them the information, let them go on your way. So for me, I get long-winded, as you can see by some of these fucking videos that I put up here. I'm very long-winded, and so the market trains me to be more concise and give the advice that needs to be given at that moment, and it helps me energetically get myself together, connect to the message, speak the message, wrap up the message and the session, disconnect, and then do it again, and train my energy levels to not be so, we gotta be so attached. And that's another thing for the reader. Sometimes we get really attached to the reading. Sometimes we nosy. Sometimes we are nosy as shit. And sometimes the lessons are very profound and we might have to mull it over, particularly if it's a new like concept that is coming through someone's reading that we have never experienced before, or we've never described to a client before, and we can mull over those things. And so energetically learning boundaries, energetically learning to distance yourself, to shut the messages off so that you don't get overwhelmed and you're just mulling over these things for like days or whatever. Learning those energetic boundaries and that energetic practice of learning to detach, right? Because we're supposed to be able to just channel things and then let them go. Because, you know, as far as kept, we've given the advice. It's up to the person who received the advice to do something with the advice. And, you know, another thing with reading tarot is like, and this is energetically hooking into someone where like they have to make certain decisions, they have to do X, Y, and Z, or else like they're not going to get X, Y, and Z out of it, can be very much energetically overwhelming for people and kind of smothering. And it's something that people do in real life outside of tarot, where like, and it's something for me and personal life, where I feel like because I can be very intense about things, I can be very aggressive about them and very we're gonna like drill this in that this is like a good idea, or like be very enthused and be like, yeah, you can do this and do this and do this, and I think this is a great idea, but you got to do it by this and this. And readers can be very aggressive in that way, and people can just be very aggressive in that way. So when you go to a market, you're going to be interacting with a bunch of different people, and you can't get attached to people's readings, and you can't take on also their actions or inaction with regards to the reading. If they ask you about topics and then they don't do nothing about it, that's on them. Like, you're a reader, like you're not a doer for their life, right? So I would say don't put too much stock in whether or not you failed because someone took action or not. So there's that. And then also, I mean, it's just, you kind of have to start to learn that it's free will, even if it's cards, and they can be very accurate, they can help, they can give a pretty good timeline depending on what it is, but it's not your life. So don't get too like involved. Like, I can remember some of the readings that I did, but like, what can I do about it? I'm not going to follow up with you. I'm just saying, I'm not going to follow up with you if I see you at the market. Oh, hey, what's up? Did blah, blah, blah happen? And blah, blah, blah. No. So you just, that's stuff to consider. Make sure you bring like water, make sure you eat, make sure you take breaks if you need to take breaks throughout. I would recommend some sort of spray, like sage spray or something like that. If you need to clear yourself, go ahead, clear yourself. If you're doing, so the market that I'm going to is 5 hours. I don't recommend just trying to do straight 5 hours of reading, because like, who the fuck does that? That's crazy as shit. So I wouldn't do that. So that's me. What else? I think that's pretty much it. I think that for me, I was very ambitious about what I wanted to do. I wanted to sell some decks that I wanted to get rid of. I wanted to do promotions. I wanted to do all this shit. And it's just like, I'm showing up now just to read, right? I'm going to show up. I'm going to read. If you follow me on Instagram, cool. If you follow me on this channel, cool. But my work is done. Like, I read. And I think that's another thing too. Like, you're going to places to do specific things. Like, don't try to do like all of this like tarot psychic shit at like these places. Like, just particularly if it's not like a very spiritual psychic tarot, themed kind of market. Like, it makes more sense if you're doing it at that kind of market. But it doesn't make sense to kind of like go full out like with it at certain events, right? It's not even because people get scared. It's just energetically, if you're only there for 1 to 3 hours, I mean, I'm going to be there for like 5, but like usually these things are just like a few hours. Don't try to put too much into it. Don't try to have too many expectations. Like, expect to get paid, like, because people will. And hopefully you break even with the fee that you have to pay and like the stuff that you have to pay to like set up stuff and gas and things like that. But like, other than that, just go have your decks and read. Like, that's it. Like, don't buy too much. Like, don't get so wrapped up in, I don't know, the fantasy of reading. And this is why I encourage people to actually like go out there and like do something, because until you go out there and read for people, like reading for people doing video is cool. Reading for people, your friends and stuff like that is cool. Like, people on YouTube, they read for people and they do video readings and stuff like that. But until you do it in person, I kind of feel like you don't get to know yourself as a reader, particularly if you're interested in reading for other people. You don't get to know yourself as a reader until you read for other people. And if you want to actually make it a business, you kind of start to learn what you do and do not want as a client base, and you start to learn what you do and do not want as far as like your reading style. Like, I want to do these sorts of readings. I'm going to places and I feel like there's a gap in the stuff that I like to read about, and so I want to offer these sort of readings. It's part of the reason why I decided to make multiple channels, because I want to read different topics. I'm okay. Like, I've read for love, finance, personal life, in general, in person. And now I want to like do that online. And it can be vice versa, right? You do it in person, now you want to do clients, like video readings and stuff like that. You do it online, now you want to do it in person. You start to kind of realize the sort of readings that you like. Another thing, and this is related to the decks. Now, this is going to be the deck part of it. This thing is creaky as a mug. Gotta lose some weight. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna hold you. Pretty fat. Don't nobody gonna be like, it's fat food. Look. The chair is creaking. That's all I'm saying. So, pick decks that read well, but not necessarily deep. And I don't mean that not in a way like how people do extendeds and stuff like that. That's for real reasons. People don't understand that people think that extendeds are just like a way to make money. Yeah, they do make money, because I mean, like, who wants to devote like 2 hours of their life on a video that, like, and you're doing multiple of those a week perhaps? Fuck yeah, like, I want to get paid for that. Like, yeah, like, you know how much money people make on YouTube? Like, people make a lot of money, and they're not necessarily money grabby or anything like that. It's just like, there's money to be made on YouTube regardless of what you do. Like, you can post you just walking and you blow up, like, so people want to get paid for that stuff, but people also want to talk more freely, and that's why they put this stuff on. I've seen OnlyFans. I've seen another website on my other channel for like ASMR type stuff. They're finding platforms for this, because some of these topics you can't talk about on here. Some topics where you can delve deeper, you cannot do. Particularly, the loved ones that get a little spicy and it starts talking about, bumping and grinding. But there's certain topics that like certain spaces can't hold. And a tarot market is a space I find, because it's not a tarot specific market. If you're just going to a market where people are making things or doing things and they're selling them, it may not be the place for you to be able to do deeper dive readings. At a psychic fair, at a spiritual fair, a tarot specific fair, yeah, that makes more sense. You know what I'm saying? That makes way more sense. But at a regular fair where people are coming and they may or may not be interested in tarot, I would stick to something pretty surface. That being said, here's some of the decks in my collection that I am considering for this. So this is an old deck, and I gotta make sure all the cards in here. But Golden Universal Tarot, this is one of the first decks I had. It was my Ratchet deck because I always seem to be doing relationships with this one. But it's not gonna, you're not gonna probably go through some trauma with your dad and your mom and, you being like a stepchild or you witnessing a marriage or remarriage or a divorce. I don't get this vibe from this deck. So there's this one. Golden Universal Tarot. Another thing, don't take 4,000 decks with you. I'm just saying, don't. Just don't. Pick your ride or die ones. Have a good variety, but I definitely took way more decks, and it was 2 or 3 that kept getting chosen. I was like, oh, I gotta carry all this shit, don't I? And then I over prepare in other ways that just also I was just this is money that was not well spent, so I will not be doing this again. Nicoletta Ciccoli, people like this one. Now this is a deeper dive, but it's not gonna rip you to shreds. I'm on the fence about this one because I don't necessarily want to do deeper dives at this market, but I'm open to topics that may be really something that people need to look at, but it's not going to be a long enough reading for me to so this is on the fence because this can be serious. It's a Neptunian deck for me, which means it's more of a subconscious type deck. It's not a Plutonian deck, which we just gonna bust it all out and it's just gonna be all serious and you end up crying and shit. This deck can go either way. This is a very warnings type deck, so again, it may not go in there. Right now, I like this one. And these are 2 maybes, and only because of the nature of these decks, I find can go deeper, but I don't necessarily know. I don't know. So, I also sometimes feel like some decks want to interact with certain people at the fair, so keep that in mind. There may be a reason why you take a deck. Gilded Tarot, I don't use this that often. When I did use it, it wasn't anything too bad. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't blowing you apart. It wasn't doing nothing. You could just read the cards. You could just read them. I would also recommend not breaking out a very new deck at a market. Just because you want to bond with the deck and you want to make sure, not that you know the deck, which is true, you need to, but that the relationship is established with the deck well enough that it will read for you. Because as an animist, there's certain times when you try to force yourself to read, and it don't be doing it. Next is the Cloud deck. I like this. This is more timeline for me. It is a moon deck, so I do moon kind of cycles with it. It's pretty okay. So this is kind of a deck timeline wise. I do that. Okay Tarot. I enjoy Okay Tarot. It's very quick. It's to the point. It doesn't really offend people. I find it's not really an offensive kind of deck. Art wise, it's not offensive. So it's not, it's not provocative, it's not offensive. It's one of those decks that can read pretty well, and it gives pretty good advice. It's just a good deck for me. Light Seers Tarot, people really like this deck. It's a very Jupiterian deck for me, and so I can understand why people like it. Really good encouragement, really good like upliftment messages. It isn't necessarily one for me that I found would be like, if you wanted to explore maybe like the darker side of things, it's the Light Seers Tarot. So it's not particularly interested, I find, in doing like deep dive work. Like if you're doing shadow work, I mean, it could be a deck for you, but I have not found it just yet to be a deck that I would do shadow work with. Deviant Moon Tarot, people did like this deck, but this is a very tricky, it's a very deviant deck, it's a very trickster deck. So I may put one deck like this. It's between probably the Chicoli or this one for the reading. I did do a deck that was like, all the watery decks are kind of like very kind of tricky. So there's that. Because the meanings from this are kind of like, if you're going through a rough patch in some way, I kind of find that these are like the decks for you. So this is a maybe. Fountain Tarot is a Jupiterian deck for me. It's a deck that if you deal with like substance abuse or like any sort of addictive behaviors and had to go through like AA or had to go through some sort of rehabilitative kind of thing, I kind of always felt like this was a deck for that. So it could be very helpful for people because it gives them hope, and it's kind of like it helps them along their journey of recovery. And recovery as a broad term, not just the stuff that I mentioned, but as a broad term. I always felt like it was for like recovery of some kind. So this is gonna be a maybe, just because like I said, I don't know if I particularly want to do deep dives at this market. I don't know if I want to spend my like birthday month doing deeper dives. Intuitive Night Goddess Tarot, I'm probably not going to consider. Woodland Wardens, I'm probably not going to consider now that I'm looking at them. Tarot of Mystical Moments is pretty interesting. It kind of feels slightly ancestral. And so I think I did read like with the second thing that I did, the second event that I did, I think I did read with this a little bit, because I had gotten it by that time, I think. But I don't know how serious I really want this to go. It's not a serious deck, but it leans into mediumship, and I, like, again, energetically, do I really want that? And I kind of feel like it can do it, so it can do 1 and 3 card readings, but I feel like perhaps I have not developed a relationship where it will reveal to me a little bit more. And I might, now I'm looking at you, I might have to go back. I was just talking about this to somebody, because he was asking about tarot spreads, and I don't do tarot spreads anymore because you kind of move past them at some point. I think as you develop your own kind of reading style, you develop past like spreads and layouts, because you start asking questions that exist like outside of that layout. And it's not that there's thousands of layouts and spreads, but it's just kind of like sometimes you just want to ride the wave of whatever this reading is saying and not assign such a fixed position to this card, right? Or to this reading. Like, I don't want to always do past, present, future. I don't want to always do, as above, so below. I don't want to always do these things, right? So there's that. The Good Tarot, pretty good. I like this deck. There's something mystical about it. I did do the Shadowscapes, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. I'm trying to stay away essentially from very potentially like subconscious delving type decks. I do want to have more confirmation affirming kind of things in my repertoire for reading out in public, particularly at markets, because it's being like, if you're getting one card, like we can't talk about all this shit until there's that. But I'm on the fence about this one. I'll say yes. So right now it's 5 decks yes, 5 decks maybe, and then 3 decks that are like pretty much no's. Awakening Aeon Tarot, I can say this probably is gonna be a no. Box of Emotions, I'm considering this. I did this for the Lilith reading, and this may just end up being on like one of my channels where I go deeper and dive into those things. Probably the Love channel and the other spaces. So that's probably a no. Kawaii Tarot, I'm about to do a video after this about this. Probably a no. Oracle of John D, maybe a yes for more very open-ended type readings. So I think I will keep this because this will be the most open-ended of my decks, because it's not a tarot deck at all. It is kind of like an oracle deck, kind of. But it poses really good questions. Like when you go into the book, it poses really good questions for each of the cards. And so I think in that way, it does have like a spread thing that you can do, but I don't ever do the spread because, like, I mean, we can't. So yes, this one's a good one, because I think if you want to leave them with some advice or things to mull over, having decks that in their description ask questions for them to mull over really could help them potentially, right? Because we're not counselors, we're not psychologists, we're not, coaches, unless you're doing that in your work. But if you can get decks that maybe probe deeper, offer questions, or a little bit more open-ended, then it could potentially help the client kind of work through some things outside of us talking together. So there's that. So wrap it up. Oracle of John D, yes. Cloud, yes. Golden Universal, yes. Gilded Tarot, yes. Light Seers, hell yes. OK Tarot, yes. Maybes, Good Tarot, Chicoli, 7C, Deviant Mood, Fountain, and then the nose, just flat, Kawaii, Box of Emotions, Awakening Aeon, whatever, Woodland Wardens, Tarot of Mystical Moments, and this might be a maybe. Intuitive Night Goddess Tarot, no. So that's it, everybody. I hope that you found this helpful, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.